Hello and welcome to a new class, a new day, a new hour, and class number 29. We're making progress. Class number 29, and we have some work to do. A lot of work to do in this class. Interesting work, productive work, very important work for you and for me. But let's start doing our work on camera number 1. All right. The other day, I think yesterday really, I was talking to you about Adam and Eve. Do you remember? Yes, you remember Adam and Eve were created by God. God created Adam and Eve. He first created Adam, and then because Adam felt lonely, God decided to create Eve. And if Adam hadn't felt lonely, God might not have created Eve. If Adam hadn't felt lonely, God wouldn't have created Eve. And if Adam hadn't had any ribs, God would have created Eve from another part of his body. Okay? Now, if Adam and Eve hadn't eaten the apple from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, God wouldn't have expelled them from the Garden of Eden. Yes. If Adam and Eve hadn't eaten the apple, God wouldn't have expelled them from the Garden of Eden. And Adam wouldn't have taken a bite from the apple if Eve hadn't insisted. Yes, Adam wouldn't have taken a bite from the apple if Eve hadn't offered him and suggested he take a bite. And Eve wouldn't have picked the apple from the tree if a serpent, a snake, hadn't persuaded her. Yes, and that snake wouldn't have spoken to her if the devil hadn't assumed the form of the snake. And so, now we have to work for a living, and now childbirth is painful. But if Adam and Eve hadn't done that, we would still be living today in paradise. And then Adam and Eve had 2 children, Cain and Abel. And each childbirth, each childbirth was painful. Yes, it was painful for Eve to give birth to Cain. And then when she gave birth to Abel, it was very painful too. Now, she wouldn't have suffered these problems if she and her husband hadn't eaten that apple. If they hadn't disobeyed God, Eve wouldn't have suffered pain in her childbirths. Now, Eve had 2 children. She had Cain first, and then she had Abel. And they grew up to be young men. And in their 20s, they were giving offerings. They were offering sacrifices to God. And when Cain offered his sacrifice to God, God didn't accept it because Cain was not offering his sacrifice with a clean mind. And so God rejected Cain's offering. Why? Because his offering wasn't sincere. If Cain's offering, or offerings, sus ofrendas, if Cain's offerings had been sincere, God would have accepted them. But because his offerings weren't sincere, God didn't accept them. And Cain became irritated and was upset. Now God accepted Abel's offerings. Yes, God accepted Abel's offerings because his offerings were sincere. If they hadn't been sincere, God wouldn't have accepted them either. Okay? And Cain, when he saw that his brother's offerings were accepted by God and his weren't, he got envious. He became envious. He got envious. Do you understand the word envious? Envy is envidia. Y también es como verbos, envidiar. Te envidio. I envy you. I envy you. Fijaos bien, porque yo acentúo la primera letra. Envy. He oído de vez en cuando personas aquí decir envy, y it's impossible to understand if you say that. Envy. I envy you. I envy you. Y luego sustantivo, la envidia. Envy is one of the 7 mortal sins. Envy. Y luego verbo, to envy. Cain envied Abel because God accepted his offerings and didn't accept Cain's. So Cain killed his brother out of envy, por envidia. If he hadn't envied his brother, he wouldn't have killed him. If God had accepted his own offerings, he wouldn't have envied his brother. And if God hadn't accepted Abel's offerings, Cain wouldn't have envied him. And in the end, Abel wouldn't have died if God had accepted Cain's offerings. Yes, because otherwise, our good friend Cain wouldn't have gotten envious. And he killed his brother. Okay. And God saw what happened. All right? If God hadn't seen what happened, nothing would have happened to Cain. But God said, Cain, where's your brother? And Cain said, I don't know. I don't know where my brother is. I'm not my brother's keeper. And God said, Cain, where is Abel? Where's your brother? And finally, Cain admitted that he had killed his brother out of envy. And so God sent Cain to another land, east of Eden, al este de Eden, east of Eden. If Cain hadn't killed his brother, God wouldn't have sent him to another land. And we, you and me, we are the descendants of Cain. Yes. We are the descendants of Cain through Moses. I'm sorry, through Noah. Noé, no Moses. Through Noah. Yes. Because Cain went to another land, propagated the species, and then finally it reached the times of Noah. And God wasn't happy. He wasn't happy because people were not humble. People were bad. People were sacrilegious. And people didn't have respect for God. And God decided that it was time to make a change. If the descendants of Cain had been respectful of God, if they had worshipped, que es adorar o venerar, if they had worshipped God, God wouldn't have destroyed the earth. He wouldn't have caused the flood if the people had been good. But they weren't. But there was one family that was good, Noah and his family. If Noah hadn't been a good man, he wouldn't have survived the flood. Okay, I need to stop now, I'm sorry, but I'll be back in a few minutes after our next teacher.
Thank you, Richard. Hello, everyone. I'm your teacher for today. I'm Natasha, as you probably know, or at least I hope you know. And I already know all of you guys, and I'm sure you already know the student that's with us today. Her name is Susanna. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Tell me something. Tell me something you did to improve your English today.
Well, I listened to some podcasts.
Very good.
And I watched some videos.
Some videos? What do you mean? Some short videos or some English
short
videos?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Okay. You can even listen to podcasts or English things when you're working, okay? Even if it's in the background, okay? Al fondo, okay? Or while you're cooking or while you're having a shower, okay? The idea is to always have English surrounding you, okay? Even if it's just a song, okay? All right, well, today we're going to start quickly because we have a lot to do, okay? We have to review the things you saw in the previous class, okay? So let's start. The first thing we're going to do, I'm going to say a sentence in Spanish and you and Susana have to say it in English, obviously, because that's what we're learning, okay? So remember to say it out loud, like always, okay? Let's start. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Si te hubiesen invitado, ¿habría sido?
If you were invited,
If they had
invited you, would you have gone?
Very good. Okay, so I'll say it again. If they had invited you, would you have gone? If they had invited you, would you have gone? Did you get that one right? I'm sure you did. Okay, the next one is for you at home, okay? Si hubiera copiado, ¿habría aprobado el examen? Very good. If he had copied, would he have passed? If he had copied, would he have passed? Did you get that one right too? This was tricky, okay? Let's ask Susana the next one. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Si no te hubiera dicho la verdad, ¿habrías discutido con él?
If he hadn't told you the truth, would you have argued with him?
Argued with him.
Argued with him?
One more time.
If he had tell you the truth.
If he hadn't.
If he hadn't told you the truth. Told you the truth, would you have argued with him?
Would you have argued? Okay. So let's go back to the people at home. I'll say it, you say it out loud so Susana can hear you, and then she'll say it again, okay? All right. Si no te hubiera dicho la verdad, ¿habrías discutido con él? So if he had lied to you, okay, or if he hadn't told you the truth, would you have argued? If he had lied to you, if he hadn't told you the truth, would you have argued, okay? Remember, if he hadn't, okay? If he hadn't told you, we need had and the past participle. That's why we have to say told and not tell. If he hadn't told you the truth. Let's see if Susana can say it.
If he hadn't told you the truth, would you have argued with him?
Very good. The next one. ¿Les habrías regañado si hubieran llegado tarde?
Would you have...
¿Cómo es regañado? Do you know at home? To tell off, okay? To tell off, which is what I do when you don't do your homework. Okay, I tell you off. Okay, so.
Would you have told
him off?
Told him off if he hadn't.
If he had arrived late.
Late.
Okay, so at home, would you have told him off if he had arrived late? Would you have told him off if he had arrived late? Okay, let's get Susana to repeat this once more.
Would you have told him off if he had arrived late?
If he had, I want to hear that.
If he had arrived late.
Late, very good. Okay, let's move on to the next point, okay? Which is the expression to go blank, which I hope you don't do in class, okay? To go blank. What is to go blank, Susana?
Quedarse en blanco.
Quedarse en blanco. Have you gone blank today?
Yes.
No. Okay, let's start, okay? Have you ever gone blank when speaking on the phone?
Yes. I have.
Okay, so full sentence.
I have went blank off.
I have gone blank.
I have gone blank while speaking on the phone.
Very good. I've gone blank when speaking on the phone, okay? Quedarse en blanco, okay? The next one for you at home. Are nervous people usually, oh my God, I'm getting mixed up. I'm going blank, okay? Do nervous people usually go blank like me? Yes, nervous people usually go blank, okay? I don't know what happened to me. Did you go blank now as well?
No, I haven't gone blank now.
No, just now. Did you just go blank? Yes?
Yes, I have gone blank.
Oh, no. Okay. The next one is for you. Ask me what I would do if I went blank on this show.
What would you do if you went blank on the show?
Okay, very good. Well, you just saw, okay? Because I just went blank. If I went blank on the show, I would laugh, okay? Because there's no problem in going blank, is there?
No.
What would you do if you went blank on the show?
I probably would laugh too.
Okay. And what would you do if you went blank at home when I was teaching you? Exactly. You would laugh as well, wouldn't you? Okay, the last one, okay? Ask me if I have ever gone blank in a class.
Have you ever gone blank in a class?
In a class.
In a class.
One more time.
Have you ever gone blank in a class?
Very good. So you ask me. Very good. Yes, I've gone blank many, many, many times in a class, okay? And Susana, have you ever gone blank in a class?
Yes, many, many times
so
as well.
Full sentence. I've gone blank.
I've gone blank many times during a class.
Okay. I've gone blank many times in a class. Okay, very good, very good. You did a very good job today, okay? So congratulations. And as I always say, keep on studying, reviewing, and practicing as much as you can. I'll see you next time. Bye.
Okay, welcome back. I think there's less butter in my house than in yours. Yeah, I'm almost sure that there's less butter in my house than yours. Why? Well, I'll tell you in camera number 1. 1, 2, 3. All right, there's less butter in my house. Menos mantequilla, no? There's less butter in my house than yours because there's only about this much butter in my house. In my house, we usually use margarine. Margarine. Margarine, not butter. There's a little bit of butter, and there's very little left. So I'm sure that there's more butter in your house, I'm sure. So there's less butter in my house than in yours. There isn't as much butter in my house as in yours. There isn't as much, there isn't as much, there isn't as much butter. There isn't as much, there isn't as much, there isn't as much butter as. There isn't as much butter in my house as in yours. There's less butter in my house than in yours. Menos que, less than. No tanto que, not as much as. So, and also, bacon, or tocino. There's less bacon in my house than in yours. There isn't as much bacon in my house as in yours. Yes, yeah. I'm sure it's true because there isn't any bacon in my house. Milk. Yes. In my refrigerator in my house, there is 1 bottle of milk. Only 1. So I imagine there's less milk in my house than in yours. There isn't as much milk in my house as in yours. And the United States and Spain, olive oil, aceite de oliva. Even though the United States is a big country in area and in population, así se pronuncia, no me digáis nunca popu. Llevo 35 años oyendo population, por mucho que os corrijo, decís siempre popu, aunque os haya corregido 100 veces, population, population. Even though the United States is much bigger, 6 times bigger than Spain in population, and about 7 times bigger in area, or 8 times, no mucho más, 8 times bigger in area, the United States has less olive oil than Spain. The United States doesn't produce. The United States doesn't. Fijaos, los Estados Unidos no produce. Lo digo en singular, aunque Estados Unidos es plural, por ser entidad nacional. The United States doesn't produce as much olive oil as Spain. But Spain doesn't produce as much coal as the United States. The United States produces more coal. The United States produces more coal than Spain. Spain produces, Spain, no digo Spain. Spain produces less coal than the US. Spain doesn't produce as much coal as the United States. No estoy hablando de frío, estoy hablando de carbón, coal. Yeah. ¿Cómo se dice abrigo? Coat. How do you spell it? C-O-A-T. Okay. The last letter in coat, abrigo, is a T. Take off the T and put an L. Coal. Escrito. Coal. Carbón. All right. A coal mine is una mina de carbón. And the United States produces more coal. Spain produces less coal. Spain doesn't produce as much coal as the United States. And Spain doesn't produce as much steel as the United States. Spain produces less steel than the United States. Steel? You don't know what steel is. Well, listen, steel is a mixture of iron and carbon. No, carbon no es carbón. Coal is carbón. Carbon is carbono. Yes, it's a gas, all right? So steel is the mixture of iron is hierro, and carbon. It makes acero. Yes, steel. Steel is important in Spain, but Spain doesn't produce as much steel as the United States. It produces less steel than the United States. There is less corruption in Spain than in Zimbabwe. Yes, there's less corruption in Spain. I imagine there's some corruption in Spain, but there's less than in Zimbabwe, much less. There isn't as much corruption in Spain as in Zimbabwe. There isn't as much corruption in Spain as in Zimbabwe. There isn't as much water. There isn't as much water in Morocco as in France. There's more water in France, and there is less water in Morocco than in France. So there isn't as much water in Morocco as in France. Okay? Now, there isn't as much sunlight in France as in Morocco. There's less sunlight, clearly less sunlight in France than in Morocco. So it's clear that there isn't as much. There isn't as much, siempre estoy con incontables en este bloque. There isn't as much sunlight in France as in Morocco. Okay, there isn't as much. And there isn't as much time for me now as 5 minutes ago, because I need to stop in just a few seconds. So I don't have as much time now as I had a few seconds ago. There isn't as much time now. I have less time than I had a few seconds ago. Less time. And my time is running out. I have about 10 seconds. So I'm going to have to say goodbye because I don't have any time left. But we're going to take a station break. Our sponsors have some words, and then I'll be back. All right. I don't teach as well as I used to. I'm not as patient as I used to be. I don't come here as often as I used to. I'm not as young as I used to be. I don't prepare classes as much as I used to. Okay? Used to es como antes. Okay? No soy tan joven como antes. I'm not as young as I used to be. No soy tan paciente como antes. Lo fui. I'm not as patient as I used to be. All right? And I don't have as much free time as I used to have. But I have enough time to say, we'll pass to another teacher, and then I'll be back.
Thank you, Richard. My name's David Wardell, and today we're going to put into practice everything that he has just shown you. And to help me, I have a very, very, very special guest, David. How are you today, David?
I'm feeling okay, thank you. How are you?
I'm very, very well. I'm very, very well. And of course, you might recognize David because he has been in a lot of television programs, theatre, films.
Yes, I've been.
So what shows have you been in?
I don't know. Last springtime, I was in a show in theater called Volleyball Love Never Dies.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And how was that experience?
Great.
Yeah?
I worked with a lot of English actors and dancers and singers, and then I thought I have to improve my English.
So that's why you're here.
Yeah, that's why I'm here.
That's why you're here. Well, don't worry about it. We're going to improve your English whether you like it or not, because today we're going to look at a certain structure, not as much as compared to less than, the comparative. Now we use not as much as or less than with uncountable nouns. Uncountable nouns include money, water, time, things that you cannot count. So what I'll do is I'll give you a sentence with less than, and what I want you to do is to change it to as much as, not as much as, not as much as. So for example, I have less time than I used to have. You will say, I don't have as much time as I used to have. Yeah?
Okay.
You okay with that?
Okay.
Okay, it needs a bit of You need to think about it a little bit, I think.
Okay.
But let's see. So let's repeat the first one. I have less time than I used to have. So?
I don't have as much time as I used to have.
Repeat.
I don't have as much time as I used to have.
Good. I don't have as much time as I used to have. I don't have as much time. Time. Very important, the M. Yeah, we don't say tai. Tai is corbato, as we've said before. Time. I don't have as much time as I used to have. Que antes tenía, yeah? Or solía tener. Yeah? Okay. This is an interesting one. I see if you agree with this statement. The Spanish are less patient than the English. Discuss. Do you think so? but before you do it, do you think that's true?
Yes, okay. We always think that English people, they are very patient, very patient.
But are they really?
I don't know. You tell me.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think it's a cliche.
Okay.
Cliche, un tópico, a little bit.
Maybe.
But I don't know. I mean, you've had experience with English actors and with Spanish actors. Do you see a big difference in their behavior?
No.
No.
I don't see a lot of difference.
That's good. Excellent. Okay, so now let's go back to the exercise. So the Spanish are less patient than English. Now I want you to change that to a sentence with not as much as, yeah?
Okay.
Or not as, in this case, not as adjetivo as, yeah? Not as patient as, for example.
Okay.
So,
Spanish aren't as patient as English.
as the English.
As the English.
As the English.
Okay.
Okay?
The Spanish aren't as patient as the English.
As the English. Muy bien, one more time.
The Spanish aren't as patient as the English.
Very good. You said Spanish very, very well, not as Spanish, yes? So, the Spanish are less patient than the English. So, that means the Spanish aren't as patient as the English. Another comparative, yeah? Okay. It looks like I have less water than you do. I have less water than you do. It's true, I do.
Yeah.
It's true, isn't it? You have more water than I do.
Yes,
so
I do.
Now, how do you say that with...
You don't have as much water as I do.
Very good, as I do. Repeat.
You don't have as much water as I do.
As I do.
As I do.
Exactly. Now repeat it.
You don't have as much water as I do.
Very good. That's mucho mejor. So, I have less water than you do. How do you say that? I don't have as much water as you do. Or you don't have as much water as I do. Estoy liando. Doesn't matter. Okay, let's try another one. I have less money than the Queen of England. I have less money than the Queen of England. So,
You don't have as much money as the Queen of England.
good. And has dicho money. Muy bien. Okay, so repeat it one more time.
You don't have as much money as the Queen of England.
Good. I don't have as much money as the Queen of England. So in casa, I have less money than the Queen of England. So you have less money than the Queen of England. I have less money than the Queen of England. One more time.
You don't have as much money as the Queen of England.
You don't have as much money as the Queen of England. Yeah, exactly. Very good, very good. Let's do one more, shall we? I'm less tired than I was yesterday. I'm less tired than I was yesterday. So we have the adjectives. So of course we replace much with the adjective. So
you aren't as tired as you were yesterday.
very good. Repeat.
You aren't as tired as you were yesterday.
You aren't as tired as you were yesterday. We don't say aren't, of course. Aren't. You aren't as tired as you were yesterday. You aren't as tired as you were yesterday. Tired. Tired. Tired.
Tired.
Tired. Yeah,
Tired.
Not cheated or anything like that. No. Tired. You aren't as tired as you were yesterday. So I'll repeat it one more time. I'm less tired than I was yesterday.
You aren't as tired as you were yesterday.
As you were.
As you were
yesterday. One more time.
yesterday. You aren't as tired as you were yesterday.
Perfect. Very good. Let's do one more. There's less rain in Spain than in England. There's less rain in Spain than there is in England. So,
There isn't as much rain in Spain as in England.
good. Repeat.
There isn't as much rain in Spain as in England.
As in England. Muy bien. There isn't as much rain in Spain as there is in England, or as in England. Yeah, you can use there is or not.
Okay.
Now say it with there is.
There isn't as much rain in Spain as there is in England.
Good. Very good. So in casa, There's less rain in Spain than in England. There's less rain in Spain than in England. There isn't as much rain in Spain as in England. There isn't as much rain in Spain as in England, as there is in England. Very, 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 very good. So, let's just do one more time. What I'm
Okay.
going to do this time is I'll give you the as much as, and I want you to change it to less than.
Okay.
So I don't have as much time as I used to have.
I have less time than I used to have.
I have less time.
I have less time than I used to have.
Very good. The Spanish aren't as patient as the English.
The Spanish are less patient than English.
Than the English. Okay, one
the
more time.
Spanish are less patient than the English.
Very good. Okay, I don't have as much water as you do.
You have less water than I do.
Very good. Okay, I don't have as much money as the Queen of England.
You have less money than the Queen of England.
Very good. Okay, I'm not as tired as I was yesterday.
You are less tired than yesterday.
Than yesterday, than you were yesterday.
Okay.
Very good. I think that's all we have time for.
Okay.
So I have to hand you back to Richard. So please practice this structure. It's very important. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
All right, welcome back. You know, I don't know as much about history as a historian does. I don't know much about mathematics as a mathematician does. I don't know as much about anthropology as an anthropologist does. I know much less, but I know more about teaching English, and I'll show you on camera number 1. All right? Don't know much about history. Don't know much trigonometry. Don't know much about science books. Don't know much about the things I took. But I do know that I love you. You remember the song? No sé mucho de historia, pero yo sé más que tú. Tú no sabes tanto como yo. You don't know as much as I do about irregular verbs. You don't know as much as I do about phrasal verbs. You don't know as much as I do about auxiliary verbs. You don't know as much as I do about modal verbs. Toma. You don't know as much as I do about the present perfect. You don't know as much as I do about the past perfect. You don't know as much as I do about conjugations. And you don't know much as I do about the verb to be. Okay? Yeah. But probably I don't know as much as you do about Spanish. I don't know as much as you do about many things, all right? And I don't know as much about mathematics as famous mathematicians. I don't know as much about chemistry as a famous chemist. I don't know as much about biology as a professional biologist. I don't know as much about computer science as an IT expert, information technology, IT. I don't know as much as politicians about politics, I think, all right? I don't know as much about building bridges as a civil engineer who knows more. I don't know as much about industrial processes as an industrial engineer. I don't know as much about coal mines as a mining engineer. I don't know as much about telecommunications as a telecommunications engineer. Yeah, there are a lot of things that I don't know very much about, okay? But Spanish people know much more than me about the Spanish language. I don't know as much, all right? And do you know as much as me about Texas history? What do you know about Texas history? I know a lot about Texas history. Do you know as much as I do? Do you know as much as I do? When did Texas become a state? You don't know? Ask me. Oh, Richard, when did Texas become a state? It became a state in 1845. In 1845, all right? Who was the king or queen of Spain in 1845? Was Isabel II the queen of Spain in 1845? I'm not sure, more or less. And when did Texas win its independence from Mexico? Well, it won its independence in 1836. Oh, really? So, it won its independence from Mexico in 1836, and it became a state in 1845. What happened during those 9 years? Between 1836 and 1845? Texas was a republic, an independent nation. Really? Yes. You see, you don't know as much as I do about Texas. Do you know as much as I do about Pastrana? And about the Duque de Pastrana? And about the Princesa de Eboli in Pastrana? Do you know that? Do you know as much as I do about Pastrana? Do you know as much as I do about Zorrito de los Canes? Yeah, do you? I bet you don't. I'm an expert on Zorrito de los Canes. All right. And do you know as much as I do about the Canary Islands? You do? Why are the Canary Islands called the Canary Islands? You don't know? No, porque los pájaros no. It's not the Canary. Por los perros. De Islas de los Canes. Islas Canarias. That's the origin. Because many years ago, thousands of years ago, those islands had a lot of dogs. Yeah. So you see, you don't know as much as I do about the Canary Islands. The Canary Islands, yes. Instead of the Canaries, you can call them Las Islas Perrunas, maybe. All right? The Canary Islands. So, you don't know as much as, do you know as much as I do? Do you know as much as I do about Spanish wine? You do? Maybe. Do you know as much as I do about the history of Wyoming? You don't? All right. Wyoming's very important. It was the home of the Shoshone and the Cheyenne Indians. Very important. And Wyoming is the most important place in the world for coal. Coal. You've forgotten already, coal is carbon. Okay. Your memory isn't as good as mine, and my memory is not very good. My memory is bad, and your memory is even worse. Coal. Escrito coal. Coal is carbon. And Wyoming is the #1 producer in the world of coal. A lot of the coal in Spain comes from Wyoming. Okay? And coming from Wyoming, it's 70% cheaper than Spanish coal. So, Spanish coal isn't as cheap as Wyoming coal. Yeah, it isn't as cheap. Now, I don't have as much free time probably as you do. I don't have as much money as some of you do. I don't have as much flour in my kitchen as you do. Flour's harina. Probably I don't have as much butter in my refrigerator as you do. Probably I don't have as much whiskey as you do, because I only have 1 bottle of whiskey in my house, and it's for guests when they come. It's not for me. So I imagine I don't have as much whiskey as you do. All right? You probably have more than I do. And I don't have as much gin, Ginebra, as you do. Ginebra, no la ciudad, eso es Geneva. Ni es Ginebra la mujer, la de Arturo, que es Guinevere. It's funny, you have 3 words in Spanish that are the same for 3 things. Ginebra was the wife of Arthur, King Arthur. In English, Guinevere. And she didn't live in Geneva, the city, Ginebra, la ciudad. She lived in England. And she didn't drink gin, Ginebra. She drank wine or beer, I don't know. Interesting stories. Okay. And the only thing I know is you don't know as much about English as I do. In the rest, who knows? Okay, we'll take another short break, another teacher, and then I'll be back to close the program.
Thank you, Richard. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another class. I'm Hannah. We're going to get started with our new practice session for today, but let's say hello to my very special student, David. Hi, David.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you.
Perfect. Well, we're going to get started with some vocabulary.
Okay.
Okay, so remember, you know what to do with vocabulary. Please repeat the words out loud with me and with David, and make sure that your pronunciation is perfect. Okay, so let's start. Justificar.
To justify.
Okay, repeat.
To justify.
Okay, to justify.
To justify.
Eso es. Muy bien. So justify. The word begins with a J. J. Justify. Justify like Jennifer, January, manager. So it's the same sound. J. J. And make sure it's strong so I can hear the J sound. Justify. And that U, it's spelled J-U, pero the U sounds like an A. Right? So justify. Again, repeat. Justify.
Justify.
Perfect. Okay, next we have relacionado.
Related.
Perfect. Repeat.
Related.
Eso es. Perfect. Related. Related. 3 syllables. Related. Related. Okay? And also, just so you know, when we say relacionado con, we never say related with. What do we use? What preposition?
Related to.
Perfect. Eso es. So, remember in English, when we say relacionado con, in English we say related to. Okay, next we have guisantes.
Peas.
Good, repeat.
Peas.
Okay, peas.
Peas.
Eso, peas. Así. Abre la boca. Open the mouth and E. When you say cheese, como queso, cheese, peas. Peas. Guisantes. Modo de vivir.
Way of life.
Okay, good. Perfect. Way of life. 3 words. Way of life. Way of life. And finally, we have reaccionar.
To react.
Perfect. To react. Again.
To react.
Okay, excellent. To react. React. Okay, so again, the emphasis falls on the second syllable. React. All right? Okay, now we're going to continue practicing the expression less than. Okay, less than. So I'm going to use a sentence using as much as and change it to less than.
Okay.
I didn't spend as much money as I thought I would.
I spent less money than I thought I would.
Perfect. Excellent. Muy bien. I spent less money than I thought I would. Now also you can leave out, puedes omitir, you can leave out I would al final. So you can just say I spent less money than I thought. And that's perfect too. Okay? I don't know as much about South American history as David does.
I know less about South American history than David does.
Perfect. Excellent. I know less South American history than David does. Muy bien. I don't have as much free time as I used to have.
I have less free time than I used to have.
Perfect. Muy bien. So I have less free time than I used to have. And remember, less, we're using less than for ¿qué? Contables or incontables. Here, we're using it for incontables. Less free time, less work, less knowledge, okay? Less money, etc. So, ojo aquí, again, incontables, uncountables. More examples. I don't drink as much wine as he does.
I drink less money than he does.
Drink money?
I drink less wine than he does.
Okay, good. I hope so.
Yes.
I hope I drink less money. Okay, so let me repeat. So I drink less wine than he does. Less wine than. Remember, don't forget than. Ese than is muy importante. So less wine than he does. Okay. She didn't buy as much food as she thought she would.
She bought less food than she thought she would.
Okay, very good. And also you can leave out she would al final. So
Okay.
say the same sentence without she would.
She bought less food than she thought.
Perfect, muy bien. She bought less food than she thought. Así, you don't have to put she would. No hace falta, it's fine. Okay, they don't have as much work as their partners do.
They have less work than their partners do.
Okay, very good. Repeat again.
They have less work than their partners do.
Perfect, great. So let me repeat. They have less work than their partners do. Great. He doesn't cause as much trouble as his little sister does.
He causes
Repeat, causes.
He causes
Eso.
less trouble than his little sister does.
Okay, good. Repeat again. It's kind of a tongue twister there. Okay, let's hear you again.
He causes
He causes.
less trouble than his little sister does.
Okay, very good. Okay, so a couple words here with the pronunciation. Let's take a look. Causes. Causes, okay? So please don't say causes. Causes, u, no. That u, it doesn't exist. So causes. Causes, okay? Causes, and also the word trouble. Trouble. We have a tr, trouble. Remember, tr sounds like a ch, right? So trouble, trouble, not trouble. Trouble sería, again, typical Spanish pronunciation. And we don't want that. We want trouble, trouble. Okay, so let's hear the sentence again. So he causes
less trouble than his little sister does.
Okay, very good. Excellent. So he causes less trouble than his little sister does. Okay, great. One more example. Let's see. Salamanca doesn't have as much pollution as Madrid does.
Salamanca has less pollution than Madrid does.
Perfect, very good. Okay, good. So and also remember the pronunciation of than, less than. We have a th, and what do? I've said it 100 times, and I'll say it again. Than, sacamos la lengua. So we stick out our tongue just a little bit between our teeth, and we breathe, right? We blow a little bit of air. Than, so less than. So Salamanca has less pollution than Madrid does. Okay, so we have two different ways of saying the same thing, right? I don't have as much free time as David does, or I have less free time than David does. So no tanto como or menos que. Okay, so two different ways of saying the same exact thing. So keep practicing, and I'll see you next time. And back to Richard. Bye-bye.
Okay, that's it. One more class. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've benefited from this class. I hope you've reviewed and gone over some things that you need to consolidate. And I really hope that now that the class is over, you can watch it again on the internet or on your mobile phone or in any different way. And I hope you can repeat aloud some of the sentences or many of the sentences that I have said and my colleagues have used during this hour. I don't have as much butter as you do. You can practice these sentences, and only if you say them aloud will you consolidate finally your agility with the language. Otherwise, you won't. All right, see you tomorrow and to continue with Inglés 4.0.